Welcome to Metro Politics on Jewish Week TV. We're here with Bruce Blakeman, the Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
How's the campaign going?
It's going great. Going great. I've put over 15,000 miles on my cars in the last few months. Been in an airplane 3 out of the last 10 days. Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Binghamton, Hudson Valley, Long Island, New York City, you name it, I've been there many times.
It's been a while since we've had a Republican senator in this state, since 1998. What's your strategy to unseat the incumbent?
Well, basically, I think that it's not necessarily a strategy to defeat the incumbent. I think basically it's a movement against what people see as arrogance in Washington, as elected officials like Senator Gillibrand that are out of touch with everyday, ordinary, hardworking families in New York. And people are angry, they're frustrated, and they're worried. They think spending's out of control. They are very upset with a health care bill that's dismantling the greatest health care provider system in the history of mankind and exchanging it with socialized medicine. They want jobs. They want the economy expanded. Virtually, Senator Gillibrand and President Obama have spoken very little about job creation and expanding the economy. People want jobs. They want to know that there's a future for their families. People are upset with our policy towards Israel. They're upset with our policies towards Homeland Security. They want us to be tougher on Homeland Security. People do not like the change in foreign policy that we've had, a shift away from Israel. They don't like the fact that the president has been going on basically what I would call the apology tour. And they want an elected official who's in touch with them, who will fight for them and be their voice in Washington.
What would you have
and that's
done,
me.
In this past year, what would you have done differently than Senator Gillibrand?
Well, I would not have voted for the health care reform bill.
What should the United States policy toward Iran be at this time in our attempt to stop Iran from achieving their nuclear weapons goals?
I think the sanctions that have been imposed are very weak. I believe that we have to take a much harder stand with respect to Iran. I also believe that President Obama and Senator Gillibrand have engaged in a course of foreign policy that has emboldened our enemies and emboldened the enemies of Israel.
How have we done that?
Well, I think if you look at what's transpired since President Obama's apology tour, since the shift in foreign policy away from Israel and more towards the Palestinians, you've seen that traditional allies of the United States are now talking to people that, or people and countries that in the past I don't believe they would enter into those dialogues, but they now perceive America to be weak under President Obama's leadership. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's take a look at Brazil. The president of Brazil just recently met with the president of Syria, Bashir Assad. I cannot think that if George Bush was still president, that the president of Brazil would meet with the Syrian president. I just cannot imagine a scenario where that would happen. I cannot imagine a situation where Turkey would engage in the conscious effort to try and break the embargo of Gaza by Israel for anything less than what is humanitarian needs of the people who live in Gaza. So I think there's been a fundamental shift away from Israel and towards the Palestinians by the administration. Senator Gillibrand has been absolutely silent on that, and I think that has emboldened Iran. So I think that Iran's procurement of nuclear weapons capability is probably the most profound threat to the United States, and certainly it is the most profound threat to Israel. I would take a very hard line, give a very definitive deadline on when they stop that process, and if they do not stop that process, then have all options available to take immediate action. Because if Iran gets nuclear capability, I believe that it is a direct threat to the United States.
Let's look at the Republican Party. It's a time of transition for the party. Who would you consider to be the standard bearer right now on a national level, and who do you align yourself with in the party as a leader?
Well, you know what? I align myself with the pizza and beer crowd of the Republican Party. I think that the Republican Party is going through a transformation whereby in the recent past we've had certain elitists within the party establishment, or as I refer to them, the champagne and caviar crew, who are basically on a high perch in an ivory tower, talking about issues that, while they may be relevant on some levels, they don't reflect the Republican Party, as I see it, on the grassroots level, or reflect, for that matter, the needs of the hardworking families of New York. So I'm getting down to the grassroots level. There is no standard bearer in the party right now, as far as I'm concerned. I think that we are going through a transformation. I think if we look at Governor Christie in New Jersey, that is someone who is reflecting the new Republican Party. The new Republican Party, the way I envision it, is to be focused on 4 or 5 main issues. One is to cut spending, reduce the size of government, cut taxes, expand the economy by cutting taxes, which I believe will lead to job creation. We've seen what the so-called stimulus programs have produced, and they produce nothing but more and more unemployment, and nothing more than the government growing and growing and growing, which is going to increase everybody's tax burden. And by the way, Senator Gillibrand and President Obama would have you believe that they're only going to increase taxes on rich people. Well, here's the dirty little secret in Washington. There aren't enough rich people to pay for all these programs and reduce the deficit. And I think the deficit and the national debt is a threat not only to the economy of the United States, but I think it's a threat to our national security. And I think we need to cut spending. Chris Christie gets that. So basically, I think he's somebody that represents what I would call the new Republican Party, or the new right, someone like him. And that's where I come from. I'm for less government, more freedom. I believe in a strong national defense. I believe that the best way to keep peace in the world is for the United States to remain the #1 military power. I think the best way to keep peace in the world is for the United States to remain the #1 economic power. And I think decisions should be made based on national interest. I'm not a globalist. I'm not an internationalist. I believe in American supremacy militarily and economically.
What do you think of Sarah Palin and her chance of being the 2012 Republican candidate?
Sarah Palin is a lot smarter than people give her credit for. I think she's very savvy. I don't think that she was particularly ready to run for vice president. She came from a small state, as governor of a small state. She was thrown into the process at the last minute, and it's a huge learning curve. There are issues that are much different on the state and local level than there are on the national level. So I think there's a perception out there that she's not smart. I think she's very smart. I think she does have great communication skills and leadership skills, but there are a lot of good Republicans out there who could be potential presidential candidates, and I think Sarah Palin's just one of them.
Thank you very much, Bruce Blakeman, for being our first
you.
Republican here on Metro Politics. We'll have to have you back again for some pizza and beer.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much.
Or some matzah and manischewitz.